Today we're going to be talking to Mike Perk. Mike Perk is the CEO of WWC, a people-focused digital transformation agency. Mike Perk is also the founder of a concept called Future Fit that ensures that leaders and managers are ultimately prepared for the change that is coming their way. Hi, my name is Caley and welcome to Heavy Chef. Today we're going to be talking to the very dapper Mike Perk. Mike, say hello to everybody.
Hello, everybody.
As a start, Mike, in your opinion, what is the greatest challenge facing leaders today?
100% it's the ability to deal with change. We've always said that. We've always said that change and change management and all those things are important. But I think now, because the world is moving at a pace like it's never moved before, it just becomes that much more important that we can adapt and we can change. The difficulty they have in that space is, well, twofold. So from a personal perspective, as a leader, they're naturally resistant to change. As human beings, we don't like it. There's some people that say, yeah, I love change. The reality is our bodies are wired against change. We like that comfort space. We like that safety and security. So shifting out of that is always quite difficult. So there's an internal struggle that leaders have got to get through because they've got to shine the light for everyone else. And the second thing is, for most organizations, the structures that they have. Hierarchical, KPIs, we follow the rules, we get promoted. That's not really about what adaptability and suddenly adopting something new or innovating is about. So change is the biggest challenge they've got. The problem is it's all stacked up against them, both personally, internally, and also from an organizational perspective as well.
Thank you, Mike. Now, Mike, you talk about being future fit, and it's a concept that you've pioneered. Where did this concept come from, and how can business leaders apply it today?
Sure. It's really been a lifelong journey without knowing it, really. So for the last 20 years, I've been part of a digital marketing agency, up until about 3 years ago, where we then shifted and we became a digital transformation advisory. But during that process, one of the biggest challenges we found, we were coming up with really cool creative stuff, ideas for businesses to change, to modernize. We were really getting involved in the business strategy, not just the marketing stuff. And consistently, we were seeing that the leaders of those organizations we were working with, they were really hesitant to try stuff, to want to adjust, to want to change, and quite stuck in their ways until they had no choice and they had to suddenly change, and it's burning platform. Crikey, we've got to get sales, let's do something. Sure. But it wasn't something that came naturally to them. So about 3 years ago, we started looking at what is the research telling us out there in the world about successful leaders that are digitally transforming their organization. So we weren't looking just at leadership in general, we were looking in particular at the digital space and the change that organizations were going through in that area of their business. And what we started to see was, irrespective of the research, there were clear patterns that kept coming out and shining out at us of what the great leaders that were successful were doing. Yeah. And as we honed in on those, there were 10 very clear things that these what we called future fit leaders were doing. So where did the phrase future fit come from, which was your original question? I was leading up to it. But it's this idea that it's not something that you can suddenly just switch on. Sure. Okay? It is a fitness. It's something you've got to work at. And those leaders that were successful and are successful in the world today, particularly from a digital context, are ones that see their journey in leadership, their own personal growth and the growth of their organizations, as one of continual iteration and fitness. And that's really where the phrase came from.
Okay, so our existing community of around 25,000 people, yes, all of you, is made up mostly of entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs. Okay. How can these people go about becoming future fit?
Well, the first thing they need to do, and just alluded to it in really what the great future fit leaders around this world are doing, it's the self-reflection. That's the first thing that you need to do as a leader. You have to understand yourself. If you don't understand how you impact others, then you're never going to understand truly how to change those around you or how to lead those around you in an effective way, how to motivate. If you can't understand what it is that you are doing yourself that is either turning people towards you or turning people against you, it's very, very tricky. But there are, I mean, in terms of patterns of key actions and attributes that we've seen, other than the general self-reflection, which I'll always promote, there's maybe some key things out of the 10 patterns that we've seen that are probably the most poignant for entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs. So the first is this idea of leading with optimism.
Oh.
It's spoken about a lot. You know, you see it on the cover of Fortune magazine or Forbes. But there is something that we as human beings respond to when someone around us is optimistic about something. You have two options, right? You can either sell your journey to your team as a burning platform. Oh my God, if we don't change, this business is going to collapse in 5 years' time. And people will follow you for a little bit, and then they'll realize, jeepers, this is an ongoing burning platform. Culture starts to go down. People start to whisper behind the water cooler, you know, and it's just not a great place to be. And you get that churn and resistance, and you don't get people following a purpose. If you go the other route and you lead with optimism, and you sell someone on a vision for the future, and yeah, these times might be tough, it might be difficult, but look what we can achieve. There's a different part of the brain that starts to kick in, and a different part of the body that starts to get motivated. There's an energy that starts to pick up from people. So leading with optimism is certainly one thing. Following on from that, we're seeing that great leaders have the ability to tell stories. And I know it's spoken about a lot around the world, is this idea of storytelling. But there's some good science behind it, right? And even as an entrepreneur who's going to present a report to their boss to try and affect some sort of change. So you've got all these stats and analysis, and there's a huge amount of rational thinking that's gone into a proposal for some change in your organization. And you go into that meeting with your senior, and the senior looks at this and everything makes sense, but they don't buy it, and they don't go for it. And the reason is that from a scientific perspective, we now know through neuroscience that a human being uses both sides of their brain, both the left side, that rational, logical, analytical side, but they also use the right side of the brain in order to make that decision. And they need both. Remove the right side, creative, irrespective of the logic, they can't make a decision, right? So we have to turn that logical, analytical side of things into storytelling. So that's an example of how an intrapreneur could use it. But the idea of storytelling as a whole is one that just excites us. It fires chemicals in our body that stops us daydreaming like we do when someone's presenting the stats and figures of the latest monthly report. So there's a whole bunch of key things there. So storytelling is also a key thing that is very important. And the third one out of the 10 that I think is quite poignant that they can focus on is the idea of value and values-based decision making. So particularly in technology, we get caught up with the what, right? It's AI, it's blockchain. We've got to learn about these things. We've got to start implementing them in our business. But rather take a step back, go, what are the values that we have internally within our organization? Then how can we apply that technology? Or what is the value we offer to our customers? And how can we apply that technology? So treat that as your base, and then you bring the technology in. And I think that's something that, of all the 10 patterns of actions and attributes that we're seeing, those particular 3 of leading with optimism, storytelling, and value or values-based decision making is something that intrapreneurs and entrepreneurs can take and start, straight away.
Sure. And how can people hear about the other 7?
Come on one of our workshops.
Great.
There we go.
Mike Perk, what practical advice do you have for leaders and managers listening or watching this interview right now? What can they do right now to become future fit?
Okay, let's just, rather than take everyone through all the different actions and attributes, let's look at a broader concept. The thing they can do is start to think about their leadership journey as a fitness. Okay, if you want to go run a marathon tomorrow, someone very close to me told me this story, and it was a perfect analogy of what we're trying to do. Is if you want to go run a marathon tomorrow, you don't just go, right? You think, oh, I'm going in 6 months' time, I need to train. I need to take that first kilometre, just walk it. Next week, I'm going to run the first kilometre. Second week, I'm going to run 2 kilometres. It's this continual iteration. It's the idea of getting fit. Yes. And I think if you can get that concept in your mind that it's a journey, that's the first thing that you can do.
Wonderful. Mike, what organizations do you see at the moment that are actually following the Future Fit principles that you teach?
I think there's quite a few around. I mean, there are a few. Let's hone in on South Africa, and one in particular that I love, because I think I've followed their journey and watched their journey over a period of time, and that's Yoko. You know, they're doing some great stuff in the market, but they're a prime example of, you know, when you start out as a startup, it's quite a chaotic space. You know, and what's brilliant about a chaotic space for a startup is you become adaptable and you learn, and you can suddenly that's not working and you're changing, and you know, it's a bit like Heavy Chef probably.
Yeah, it's like us right now.
Yeah, so that is an important part of being able to adapt to change. Now, what most organizations fail to do is, as they grow, they then put all these structures in place, which allows them to scale at a rate in a very controlled manner. Now, if you look at someone like Yoko, they've managed to scale globally while still maintaining that, I hate to use the word chaotic approach, but it's more an energy of, that might not be the way. Let's quickly adopt, let's quickly change, let's quickly do this. And I think when you've got that approach to business, you get the best of all worlds. You know, you've got a leader that's leading with optimism. You know, they're actually doing what they're doing, not saying. You start to build a learning culture, and they're creating structures that are going to last them in terms of innovation, and that is critical in order to be able to change. So there's lots out there, but let's use Yoko. I think they're great.
Great. Mike, what do you do in terms of keeping up with these principles that you're teaching?
So I'm a firm believer in a philosophy called the one thing. You know, Pareto's law of 80-20. You focus on that 20% that's going to make the biggest difference, and it can make 80% of the change. So I narrow that down to, okay, where's my biggest problem lie in terms of developing myself as a leader? And often it's finding the time. And it's the biggest thing that I hear from a lot of people that I work with. I don't have the time to learn about this. I don't have the time. So if that is the thing that is going to make the difference, if that is a problem that you've got to solve, that's what you've got to focus your energy on. And I do something called time blocking. So in order to ensure that I continually keep moving forward and keep building my fitness as a leader, I block out my time every day for 3 hours. I have a little place I go to called the bunker, which is my little space. I don't turn my emails on. If possible, I stay away from the internet. Sometimes I'm researching because that's part of my journey. I literally go in there and I take out that 3 hours a day in order to continually move forward. And I put it in my diary. So I make a meeting with myself as it is. I can't claim that I came up with that concept of time blocking. It is about the one thing philosophy, and I think that's a book I would recommend a lot of people to read. But that's the thing that keeps me going and moving forward. It allows me to not fall back on my laurels.